Hi, my name is Walker Clausen, and today we're going to be taxidermying a rabbit foot to put in a shotgun shell. So this will be a lucky rabbit's foot that you can have on your keychain, and you can take it anywhere with you. So the supplies you're going to need are a pair of scissors. These are some heavier duty ones. You can also use shears, and that will be used to cut the rabbit's foot off the rabbit. Next, you can use some hydrogen peroxide. This is 3%. Some 20 mil team borax. 2 Ziploc bags, a hair dryer, some wire clippers, a needle nose pair of pliers, wire, and it's about 5 inches long, and I use copper and regular wire. It doesn't matter which one you use. A hammer, a punch, a block of wood with a little hole cut out, a shotgun shell, a razor blade, some super glue, and of course a rabbit's foot. So the first step you're going to do, there's about 10 of them. The first step you're going to do is kill a rabbit. You can do this with a shotgun or a 22 or whatever you want to use. As long as you get the rabbit killed, that's all that really matters. Moving on to step 2, you're going to take your rabbit and you're going to cut it off with your scissors or your shears. When I kill rabbits, I kill jackrabbits and cottontails. So as you can see, this is a cottontail and here's a jackrabbit. The jackrabbit is much bigger, so I use a 12 gauge shotgun shell for the jackrabbit and a 20 gauge shotgun shell for the cottontail. When I cut the rabbit's foot off for a cottontail, I usually cut it above the joint, so I leave a little bit more on there because they're pretty tiny. And for jackrabbit, since they're pretty big, I cut it off below the joint. Now that you have the rabbit's feet cut off, we'll move on to step number 3. You'll take the hydrogen peroxide in a Ziploc bag, and you'll pour all the hydrogen peroxide into the Ziploc bag. Then you'll take all the feet that you have. Usually I kill about 3 or 4 rabbits each time. So we'll put all of the feet into the bag, and we'll leave the feet in the hydrogen peroxide for about 2 days. This will help clean the feet off and get them ready for step number 4. After the 2 days is up, you'll take the feet out of the hydrogen peroxide, and then take your borax and your other Ziploc bag. You'll add a little bit of borax and some water into the bag and mix it up. Then you'll take all the feet that were in the hydrogen peroxide and put them in the borax for about 30 minutes. This will help make sure the bugs don't get into the feet, and it will also help cure them so they stay good for a long time. So now moving on to step number 5, you'll take either a blow dryer or you could also let them air dry. You'll take them out of the borax and you can either set them on the table or on a counter where they'll be out of the way where animals can't get to them, and you can either blow dry them if you're in a hurry, or you can just let them air dry and sit there, which works well too. I usually like to leave them out in the air. That way they get pretty soft just naturally. If they still are a little bit crusty or a little bit damp after a few days, you can take your hair dryer and blow them off, and usually that'll fluff them up. So now moving on to step 6, you'll take the wire and you'll cut it either into strips of about 5 inches. You can pick either type of wire you want. It doesn't really matter. Today I'm going to be using the copper wire. So after you cut your wire, you might have to strip it down if it's copper wire. If it's regular wire, you can just buy it like it is. After you cut the wire, you'll want to bend it. So this is how I usually bend it. It's kind of a T shape. I usually fold it in half and then bend it out. So it's pretty simple. And this piece in the middle is about 1 inch long. You'll want to make sure you leave that way it can go through the shell later on. So then after you cut your wire and bend it, you'll want to find a shell that you want. So today I'm going to be using a maroon colored shell. You'll take your razor blade and you're going to simply just, without cutting yourself, cut the top of the shell off. Now make sure the shell is empty and already discharged, otherwise you might have a problem on your hands. But you'll want to cut the top off, and you want to make it as even as you can. This one's a little bit uneven, but I already prepared one that is pretty nice, so we'll use it. But you want to make it as flat and even all the way around as you can. And then you'll want to take your punch and your hammer and place the shotgun shell over the hole. So we'll use this one. You'll place the punch down right in the middle of the shell, right on top of the primer, and then you'll just punch the middle of the primer out. And usually it comes out really easy, and then you'll have a hole right in the middle of your shell. Once you have the primer punched out and the top of the shell cut off, you'll want to move on to step number 8. So you'll take your wire that you bent into a T, and you'll find your rabbit foot that you like. So this is a jackrabbit, and I'm using a 12 gauge shotgun shell. Then you'll take your copper wire, you'll hold it from the top of the, or I guess it's the bottom of the T. You'll place it on top of the rabbit's foot, and then you'll start to slowly wrap the copper wire, or whatever wire you're using, around the rabbit's foot. This is what actually holds the rabbit inside the shell. This is kind of key. Usually I just try to spiral it down slowly and keep it as tight as I can against the rabbit's foot itself. If you don't tighten it as tight as you can, then sometimes it might not fit into the shell. So usually I use my pliers or something and bend it around as tight as I can, because it'll be handier in a little bit. So once you have your wire pretty snug around there, we'll move on to step number 9. We're going to take our rabbit foot and wire, and we're going to stick it through the shotgun shell. Now you'll have to make sure that the end of it is pretty skinny, otherwise it won't fit through the hole at the end. You'll just have to slowly force it through, and now that I have just a little bit of it poking through, I can take my pliers and slowly just pull it up. If you go too fast, you might pull the copper wire off your rabbit foot, and then you'll have to start back over with a new piece of wire. So if you go pretty slow, it'll usually come up through there pretty easy. And the last part of step number 9 is pulling the top of it apart. As you can see on this one, I kind of did like a diamond shape. That way it'll fit on your keychain. So I usually take a small pair of needle nose and just slowly force them in there and slowly open up the top. You can do a circle or diamond. Diamonds are usually easier to make with a pair of pliers, and they look kind of good too. So now that I have my top of my copper wire bent out like I wanted to, I'll move on to step number 10. I'm going to take my super glue. This is Loctite super glue. Usually I use liquid, but this is gel. So you'll take your super glue and you'll just squeeze a little bit down in through the primer hole. This will help make sure that the copper wire and the rabbit foot and the shotgun shell stay together. It usually doesn't take very much, and it'll hold pretty well. So in conclusion, I'll run back through the steps. You'll first kill a rabbit. Second, you'll cut the feet off using shears. You'll cut cottontails below the joint and jackrabbits above the joint. Then 3, you'll put them in the hydrogen peroxide for about 2 days. Step number 4, you'll put them in borax for 30 minutes along with water. Step number 5, you'll let them dry. Step number 6, you'll want to cut and bend the wire. You can use either type of wire. You can use like fencing wire or copper wire from like a wall. Then you'll move on to step number 7. You'll take a shotgun shell. I have all sorts of colors that I use, and you'll cut the top off as well as punch out the middle using a punch. Then step number 8, you'll bend the wire around the foot. Make sure you do this really slowly and carefully. This is what holds the rabbit's foot in the shotgun shell. If you do this carelessly, your rabbit foot might fall out later on. Then step number 9, you'll push your rabbit foot up through the shotgun shell and bend out the top of it. And then step number 10, you'll glue the top of the rabbit foot in the shotgun shell, and you'll let it dry. And then in about an hour or 2, it'll be ready to put on a keychain.